Hello students, today we'll be discussing our second poem, that is an elegy written in a country churchyard. In the earlier lecture I had given you a brief introduction what elegy should be and what you should expect. So elegy, in we say that, is written in a song of mourning sort of, which is written here. Gray has written this elegy about the countryside people or the country folk who have died without being known by anybody. So when we talk about elegy written in a country churchyard, we must know that Gray had started writing elegy in 1746, though he discarded many versions which were probably read by his friend Horace Walpole and planned to title the work simply the stanzas, until his friend William Mason suggested him that this should be instead named as an elegy, which is a meditation in a burial ground, proved a popular theme of that era, and Gray may have thought that a recording of his thoughts about a graveyard while living next door to a cemetery in Peterhouse would be a good idea. However, the description of the grounds matches those of the churchyard at Stoke Poges, where his mother and aunt were living, and he often visited them. He mentions unhonored dead, which suggests some members of a rural community rather than the distinguished occupants of graves in Cambridge. In addition, the scenery which is described by Gray matches the Stoke Poges cemetery, particularly that of two yew trees. Although Gray did not at first intend the poem for publication, it impressed his friend so much that he immediately began to circulate it in the manuscript form. So the poem has total 32 4-line stanzas in iambic pentameter, and the elegy is in three voices, means it is sung by, or it is told by, in three voices, where the first 23 stanzas are spoken by the dead youth. Then the following 5 lines Gray speaks, while lines 98 to 116 are spoken by a hoary-headed swain. When we'll go through the poem, you will come to know about it. Or a countryman. And Gray supplies the concluding 12-line epitaph. Some critics say that Gray imagined his own final days and he was writing his own epitaph. Most of the lines represent a mixture of Gray's and West's expressions, but they also borrow heavily from Latin, Italian, and English poets who were writing during 1740s. Although some feel the length to be excessive, Gray desired to include multiple variation on his main idea, which suggested that although the dead in the graveyard are uncelebrated, they also lie peacefully, having enjoyed uneventful lives filled with no crime, guilt, or anguish. Therefore, the poem may be envisioned in 4 balanced sections, following the first 3 stanzas that are wonderfully described in a churchyard setting. The first of the 4 stanzas deal with the humble nature of the lives of the dead. The second 4 contrast their lives with the lives of the celebrated. The third 4 focus on the fates depriving any of the dead villagers of greatness, while the final 4 celebrate the fact that the villagers did not have to suffer the effects of crime or negative emotions. The poem opens with the melancholic tone most readers immediately notice, means it is a sad poem. Like there are words such as curfew, tolls the knell of parting day, the ploughman homeward plods his weary way. All these words make the mood a somber one. Second stanza gives us imagery that creates a life which is winding down, and the beetles, drones, drowsy twinklings, the herds of sheep, all these seem to be inspired by the Italian poet Dante, which the pastoral scene is bathed in moonlight, its stillness broken only by the moping owl, means the owl who is moping, complaining to the moon. By the third stanza, the reader understands that a graveyard is the subject, because everything, first the poet describes the scene, then we come to know that maybe this place is a graveyard. The speaker describes an area where there is a heaps of turf, in a man a mouldering heap. Each body lies in its own narrow cell, and the group are identified as forefathers of the hamlet. Therefore, Gray adopts the traditional figurative language of metaphor to compare death to sleep. So each stanza describes all that the forefathers no longer experience, including all the daily chords, the sounds, the daily routine they used to have. Everything is shown that now they cannot experience all this. So this can be seen after noting all these images of the forefathers. He comes to the ambition which had mocked these poor people. Gray begins to emphasize his theme, praising the simple life of those now at rest in the churchyard. They may never have experienced the boasts of heraldry, the pomp of power, that is, immense wealth or status in the society, but they have led a peaceful life. Then the 10th stanza gives us an example of how Gray moves with language, and he has the skill in establishing a solemn pace fitting the occasion that he is describing. The speaker continues to stress that those who achieved more than the men at his feet have no effect on death. Even if the dead at some time dreamed of greatness or knew of celestial fire, they were not allowed to act on the passion, means they didn't have the opportunity to come forward. These sort of people are compared to gems that have lost their shine in the unfathomed caves of ocean, and the flowers that have bloomed somewhere in the desert. They, however, as expressed in the 17th stanza, Gray says that that is not a bad thing, because due to this they have avoided a guilty conscience, shame and pride, that thought leading to a line with the phrase later made famous when Thomas Hardy selected it as a title for a novel, Far from the Madding Crowd. Their sober wishes never learn to stray. He urges listeners not to have concern for these uncelebrated lies. Then the imagery of the poem remains peaceful as Gray extends the sleep metaphor representing death. The speaker explains the dead youth will never be wealthy or famous, but though he was not blessed with any particular knowledge, and he was possessed by melancholy since birth, now he contradicts what the readers might be thinking. The dead youth did enjoy the bounty of friendship and a sincere soul. Riches equal to material goods. The speaker then concludes that no further knowledge of the dead man is necessary, as he now rests with God. So we can say that Gray's elegy has provided tremendously successful piece of work, and even the Monthly Review had noted at that time that this excellent little piece is so much read and so much admired by everybody that to say more of it would be superfluous. It enjoyed multiple reprinting and wide imitations in English as well as other languages. In addition to the familiar version, An earlier shorter version, later labeled the Eton manuscript, exists. So this work, that is Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard, has become very successful, much read poem by Thomas Gray. Thank you. We'll be continuing with this poem in our coming lectures, and we'll go through line by line analysis or explanation of the poem. Thank you.